Right, we should be live. So, greetings and welcome. I am Joffrey. Oh, that actually went live really quick this time. And today I'm joined by Darkest Light and Vector Maximus. He is back, though he is on the laptop, so his voice will be it's a little less good now. Um, Today we're learning about culture at long last. Because before we'd learned a little bit about how cultural conversion can work, uh, but now we get to uh, learn about all these happy, smiling people. Look at them; they're dancing. They're all so happy. Look at they're doing things. He's got
I'm rather disappointed that they don't have just like something incredibly ominous lurking like in the temple.
you don't think the ominous thing is whatever this man has in this bottle? I
Oh no no no!
It's
See,
different
it's
Mercury. He's
just off
about to
screen.
become immortal. Trust. Emperor Qin swore by it.
I think that's
It's
that's
it's
the
it's
first thing that came to mind for me too.
it's pure mercury.
I know. It's a pure mercury potion.
No concentrate. 100% natural.
And then the fellow on the right is about to strap all of those rockets to this lady's chair.
You
All
want
right.
to dynasty astronaut? Here we go. I'm
So,
assuming this is meant to be China anyway. It could be Japan.
that's definitely China. um culture is a
Yeah, this is
tricky
China.
culture is a tricky topic because it is so abstract as a concept, but also it's an area of our games that people have quite strong opinions about, especially when they have real world connections to that culture. As such, we would appreciate it if the discussion on this thread is limited to the mechanics of the culture system as presented here, and direct your specific feedback to the culture setup to the relevant regions, Tinto maps, where it will be much more helpful. That makes a lot of sense. Yes, that people should probably do that. Oh gosh, I instantly see Marath the culture. Oh no. And hello,
Hendrix is
Armas.
about
Hello.
to have the time of his life.
Mm-hmm. Culture group Indian. Hendrix would be like, now wait just a second, they should split it up more than that. Uh, so, what is culture? Culture is the culmination of vernacular, music, food, identity, ethnicity, art, and various other hard to define ideas. It is something possessed by countries, pops, and characters, and contains two major dimensions: culture group and language. Okay. It's the Marathi language and culture group Indian. Oh. I get that. That makes sense then. Where the equivalent of like, yeah. So it's a lot more like how CK3 cultures will work, where you'll have cultures that have a higher baseline acceptance of each other. First, because they have the same heritage, and then second, because they've got the same language, and then third, because they share the majority religion. Uh,
Yes.
so just multiple stacking things that if combined all together, you'll have situations where in France, perhaps, the northern French cultures, most of the northern French cultures will have the same language, and they'll all have the same heritage, presumably, including the South, or culture group rather. And then maybe the religion will play an effect, and maybe it won't. We'll have to see. But moving along. Culture group. For the most part, cultures all consider each other to be neutral, but they can also have a neutral preference or aversion to specific cultures. Greetings to you, Rain. Yes. If you remember correctly, Imperator Rome has something similar where cultures in the same group will be less mad even when not integrated. Yeah, I think that was the case, but with the way that Imperator does it, at least, it's pretty jank by comparison because in EU4, for example, there is a way to achieve just integrating all cultures in your group, but in Imperator there isn't. So you're left feeling like, waste do I waste integrating a culture that already has lower penalties, or do I just convert them all? And usually the option is just convert them all. Don't tolerate people that you already kind of do. Just get rid of them all because you want to get rid of the people with the worst penalties. So, yes. So sometimes people have natural preferences or aversion to specific cultures. And I presume they're going to explain that that's because of the language and culture group, or maybe there is pre-scripted stuff where I don't know. I'm not going to say examples right now, but maybe maybe they've got some scripted. All right. This is represented with cultural opinions, which in ascending order are enemy, negative, neutral, positive, kindred. Oh, I like that. That's just fun. That sounds fun. I could definitely just picture myself in the future once the game's out being like, oh yes, you need to do these things to make sure that these people are considered kindred, or these people are you got to stop these people from being seen as your enemy. You don't want to, or it's more difficult to conquer this land because the people there are seen as enemies. All right. This mainly gives modifiers in various places, for example, country opinions of each other, or how expensive they are while accepted. Expensive while accepted. Ooh. Oh. Oh. So that's the sort of thing that the culture's opinions of each other will actually have, where not only will it change just the way that they're treated in your country, but if you accept them, it's more expensive if they're considered how a worse opinion, or it's cheaper to accept them if they have a positive or kindred level with you. Very interesting. All right. So most of these will exist in 1337, but there is a diplomatic action to change an opinion over time. Diplomatic action. So what? So you use a diplomat, or you use diplomats rather. Through diplomacy, you can attempt to talk to just another country that is of a different culture to make the opinion between your two primary cultures higher? Huh. But then does it go down over time or something? What causes it to change? Because then could you create a vassal of a culture you've conquered and then through diplomacy with said vassal make that culture become considered kindred
Well,
and then integrate them?
if I recall, they said something about a cabinet action to do it.
Well, they're saying diplomacy here. I could. I mean, I know there's cultural conversion. I don't know. Also, then again, you don't really want to. You don't typically actually want to accept every culture because you actually need to make your culture spread to rank up. Huh. All right. So. So here we have, a list of cultures present inside Aragon, with two-way opinions relative to the primary culture, Catalan. Please note that these opinions are work in progress and might not be final. So Catalan is the primary culture of Aragon, which is, it's listed as primary. And Aragonese is considered, they are accepted with a positive opinion of each other, but they're not actually considered kindred. Yeah, I guess it must be pretty rare for that to happen then. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I don't think it's a very common thing at all.
I wonder what sort of examples of that will exist at game start then. Perhaps like examples like Greater and Lesser Polish, but I don't know. Culture capacity. Oh. Oh, oh boy. Cultural capacity represents the maximum number of cultures a country can tolerate or accept. For most countries, it starts quite low, but there is an advance every age to increase the maximum, as well as various other sources like government reforms and policies. Except cultures of Aragon. Using 0.26 too much cultural capacity gives this penalty. Cultural tradition, influence, and efficiency of cabinet. There's a lot of things that cause the efficiency of cabinet to drop. That sounds spooky. So Aragonese. Oh wow. Oh, Aragon already. Okay, so accept the because these aren't accepted. Andalusi, Sephardi, and Sardinian aren't accepted. Here it's listing Andalusi and Sephardi as accepted. So presumably this is just them turning on them being considered accepted? I
I
don't know.
think acceptance and tolerance are different. Maybe. I might be wrong.
Oh, you're right. Yes. Yes. I forgot. Except this means that Aragon, or presumably this is just Aragon at GameStar already, like having these cultures all as accepted. And yes, as you were saying, Dark, they did explain that the whole point of like this is that it's cheaper to have a culture accepted if they've got a higher opinion of each other. Um, and it's worse if it's a negative opinion. Wonder if you can make another culture your primary and then exile your old one. I highly doubt you can't. I'm sure that's very possible. I'm sure that it's possible to for example, play as Andorra and swap your primary culture to Sephardi. That's I've definitely not considered doing that exact thing and talked about it on a stream before. It's a whole 2.23% of Aragon's population, my dude. What's so many? Okay, but getting back on with it. Yeah. Culture acceptance advance. Yeah. All right. So each culture costs a different cultural capacity depending on relative size, opinions, culture groups, and languages. Okay. So it is also easier if they share a culture group or language with you. Okay. I'm then definitely starting to see where it comes into a question of do you accept these cultures? Do you accept the cultures that already like you? Like if you're playing as France, do you accept the cultures that already are like considered like a high opinion of you, or do you refrain from that and try to convert them? And then the other question is how easy is it to accept a culture? Because what if I want to, as France, accept the culture of the major population centers of France as I'm centralizing it, and then if I'm expanding someplace else, maybe I want to stop accepting those cultures and try to convert them so that I'm capable of spending that capacity on something like Aragonese or Catalan, which is not going to have any affinities whatsoever with me.
No, you need to do the 20th century France LARP and accept no other cultures, Gallify them all.
I mean, that's what I'd want to do, but but I don't know. We'll have to see how feasible that is. Yeah. Hmm. As well as I'm curious how feasible it is to try and like I was saying, create vassals, for example, and then make through interacting with that vassal increase the culture's opinions of each other to kindred level and then just integrate them for relatively cheap. Don't know. Each culture to do, yeah, cultural cost of Andalusia, base tolerated culture. Okay, so yeah, it's by default 1, and then 1. So so that's like, yeah, what 1 million, that's the number of your primary culture, perhaps? I don't know. Because it's saying 1 million versus 995,000 Catalans. Wait, no. Catalan's the primary culture. So, huh? Is that your total population?
I
So,
believe that's the pop of both cultures.
but
So since there are
Catalan,
more Andalusi than there are Catalan, it's a more expensive one to embrace.
but there aren't. Not even remotely as close. There's like 1/5 as many Andalusi as Catalans.
Well,
So,
it might not necessarily be a normal setup. It might be something they've edited for the sake of demonstration.
oh, oh, and then there's Aragonese, which is showing this. Oh gosh, you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Okay, so that is the idea, that the relative size. So the smaller it is compared to your primary culture, the cheaper it is. But yeah, one shared culture group. So Andalusi shares the cultural trait of being Iberian, which means that it is 15% less expensive. And then the neutral opinion has zero effect. But then if we move over to Aragonese, which is a lot less expensive, base accepted culture plus 3? Huh? Base tolerated culture.
I presume the relative size is to give you a penalty so that you can't just, for example, take English culture, which is a large unified culture at the start date, likely has a bunch of pops. So say you're Ireland, you can't just conquer, England and then accept the culture super easily
Yeah, yeah.
because then you're able to core.
Mm-hmm. I mean, realistically, if you conquer England, you should feel the urge to switch to English culture if you're Ireland, which is
Exactly.
hilarious. Because it would genuinely be more efficient for you. Um, because it would take
Basically
ages
what
for you
happened
to
with
convert.
the Anglo-Scottish Union.
But the thing that's okay. Did they elaborate it? No. Okay, so this is very strange to me. Cultural cost of Andalusia. So base tolerated culture 1, base accepted culture 3. It's more expensive to accept to accept culture that what? But accepted. So what does this mean?
Hey, scroll back down. Scroll back down.
Yeah, okay. Cultural opinion. Cheaper.
Um,
Base accepted culture. Base tolerated.
oh, I think might know. That might not be completely separated because I think that Aragonese and Catalan are more kindred, meaning that it's a cost of 3 because it's a fully embraced culture, whereas the other is not fully embraced, it's only tolerated, so it's plus 1.
So is this saying that the more accepted a culture is, the more no? Huh. Is that no? Wait, is this saying that different cultural capacity, cultural capacity represents the maximum tolerate or accept? No, maximum number of cultures you can tolerate or accept. I see. That wording's important because Andalusi is being tolerated. These are different things. We're thinking about this too much from EU4 standpoint, and they're not being specific enough. This is because you can spend more capacity to accept a culture, which means that you are fully embracing it and having, I guess, removing all the penalties. Meanwhile, tolerated is a lesser version of it, I suppose. Huh.
Greater granularity.
Didn't hear that. That time you really came garbled out. Don't make it worse on purpose. No.
I said it seems like there's greater granularity in this setup.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet as well there's probably room to mod this as well, adding new tiers for things, which could be fun. And unique. Maybe you can even make like a unique version, like where a specific group or a specific country for or tag gets a unique thing instead of accepting or tolerating, they can do something else. But by default,
Where can we make the relations instead of what was it? Hated?
Enemy.
Enemy.
Yeah.
Maybe there's one that we can set like tremendous status or something.
By default, every culture in the world is non-accepted to you. It is the default state, and at best it means you ignore them. Non-accepted pops are pretty miserable in your country, but also don't provide you with any benefits. So, tolerated cultures. If you have the cultural capacity, you can elevate a culture to tolerated. And this will make the pops a little more content. Tolerated pops will grow as normal, and they will also be a bit happier. Accepted cultures. You can elevate it even further into being accepted, at which point they gain special rights. Even though an accepted culture costs 3 times more capacity than tolerating it, it's usually much more desirable, as they will give you more levies and sailors. Yeah. Because tolerated theoretically is just about removing more of the penalties. Meanwhile, actually accepting cultures brings it to almost, if not equaling, your primary culture in value that way.
Yeah, nearly parity with your main culture.
And Gemalt, no, you did not miss any maps. We're discussing the main Tinto talk of the week, which is about culture. And countries, yes, and countries will like you more if you accept their primary culture. I see. However, accepted pops cannot be slaves. This is tragic. Yeah. Oh wow. Oof. Damn. Accepted pops cannot be slaves, and you cannot accept a culture with enemy cultural opinion. Okay, it's literally impossible, but you can with negative. You can with ones that have a negative opinion of each other, but it's impossible for ones that are enemies. So you would need to work on fixing that before it would even be feasible. Right? Primary culture. At the very top of the pyramid is primary culture, of which every country has exactly one. This is the principal culture of the apparatus of state, and it is favored in many calculations. It is not necessarily the largest culture. You can find several countries where a small elite of nobles or clergy rule over the peasant masses belonging to a different culture. Yes, that's always fun. Primary culture is an important gate to a lot of gameplay content, such as advances, unit types, government reforms, and so on. It is also impossible to list it all here, but just know that the primary culture you have can affect many different parts of the game. You can swap your primary culture with an accepted culture if it fulfills the requirements, such as if it becomes the dominant culture in your country, or if it is the culture of your ruler. There's also a game rule for it to be of the same culture group. Okay. Okay. Thinking. Yes, how can I manage to make my ruler of a minority culture in my country? Yes, it's probably quite difficult. But the fact that there's a game rule for something as simple as allowing you to swap to one that is accepted and just in your culture group, even if it isn't the majority, is quite appealing. That sounds very fun. So, language. Oh boy. Fun. So, attached to the cultures is the language system, which is spread across 3 tiers. 3 tier? Wow. Okay, romance language. Oh God. Uh, Dialect, language, language family. Of these three, language is the most important and where most of the gameplay takes place. Language families, however, yes. The largest subdivision, many languages belong to a language family. For example, Arabic belongs to Semitic, and the Indo-European family is split into its subgroups, like Germanic, Germanic and Romance, because otherwise it is simply too large. Languages like Basque are isolated and do not exist in a language family. So yeah, it literally doesn't show up on the map mode. This mostly offers a small opinion bonus and also slightly minimizes cost for things like cultural acceptance and market attraction. So, okay, I do like the slight bonuses idea, yeah. And it's funny to think that because Arabic is a Semitic language, that means that they would have tiny bonuses between them and Jewish pops. Kind of feel like Slavic is a bit too much of a presence where it divides the Uralic in two. Well, these are language families. This is accurate. This this is a very accurate depiction of the situation, though, when it comes to language families. The Hungarians don't that's not a Slavic language. Iranic and Indic groups haven't been set up yet. All right. Languages, however. Every culture has a single language which represents the most common vernacular among its people. Languages are often larger groups that are comparable to an EU4 culture group in size. If anyone here has played that game, I wonder. For example, Iceland to Sweden all use variants of the Scandinavian language, while everyone from Vienna to Hamburg will use variants of the German language. Variants. Huh. Okay, well they do have Occitan as a separate one. Interesting that they've got French and Occitan, but they don't have High or Low German. I'm not going to complain, but this is just interesting to know. Languages have language power, which is impacted by many sources, such as which countries use it as a court language, common language, and liturgical language. Liturgical language. Huh? So Arabic being the liturgical language of Islam is actually actually has an impact on the game. That's very interesting. And court languages as well. It is expressed as a percentage of the most powerful language in the world and impacts the intensity of bonuses you get from it. So making your language into the lingua franca is actually a thing you can do. Kind of like how English began to dominate world trade over time through the British Empire. It's very interesting. So Spanish, language power 30%. And it's got dialects, yeah. You get the lowest tier. Alright. Interesting. Aragonese, Catalan, Ladino, and Leonese. Spanish language is used by the Aragonese. Sephardi use it, huh? I guess yeah, that's the Iberian Jewish culture. The Spanish language is not currently the liturgical language of any religion. Not currently. That can change. Oh. You wonder if Protestant faiths do not have the liturgical stuff? Well, yeah, I guess theoretically, Latin is the liturgical language of Catholic, for example, which has interesting implications for the fact that there's quite literally no culture that uses Latin. Huh. Imagine if it's possible to swap your culture to a different language, so you, as an Italian, could just swap your culture to use Latin somehow. Revive it. Like, that would probably be quite powerful if it is possible. The dominant language in each location is shown in each location. Yeah, Hungarian strong. Ah, Kipchak language of the couple Cuman provinces in Hungary. Nice, nice. But yes, Occitan. Occitan is used by Catalan. That's interesting. That's
Yes.
very interesting, actually.
That's a real thing, I believe.
I'm sure it is a real thing, yes. and then Cisalpine is different from Italian. And then, of course, below this tier, because you've got language families, language, and then dialect at the bottom. It's very interesting. Because you'll have a different dialect for Catalan. Protestant would just use local language as its liturgical language. No, I just wouldn't have one. It just wouldn't have a liturgical language because it wouldn't impact that. There would be no reason for it to impact the game. To add diversity within a language, we have a system of dialects, though we aren't especially set on that nomenclature. They represent vernaculars that in Project Caesar's time period broadly form the dialectical continuum, and are an effective way to differentiate them without weakening them by splitting them into full languages. I like that very much. That sounds quite flavorful. Dialects are purely for flavor and have no gameplay effect. Two dialects are considered identical for most purposes, such as opinion bonuses, and they share stats like language power. For example, both Leonese and Castilian are considered the same Spanish language, and so share the same language power, but may have different character names, location names, and potentially other light flavor too. I'm very happy to see this. That is very exciting. I love that. Oh gosh, I can't wait to go ham with a title flavored name lists and other such things based on your dialect. Yes. Making some small culture that is oh I mean for example we got I see that the Anglo-Irish culture has its own language or dialect rather. So if you had someone ruling England who was who spoke Anglo-Irish or had Anglo-Irish culture rather, they'd probably have the Anglo-Irish language, and that would mean that their name list would be a little different.
It's called Hiberno-English, apparently, according to the diagram below.
Oh, did they change it now? Or well, that's the name of the language at least.
Yeah.
English.
Hiberno English.
I mean,
Under
I would
English.
I would like that more for the culture name too. If they'd like to change it, please. But yeah, I see. Swedish, Danish, Norwegian. Yep. Oh, they do have different the dialects. I didn't even notice. The dialects, this is fantastic. And then Dutch is a Germanic language, but Frisian is its own. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that to pieces. And then Western Slavic language has like Polabian as a dialect, Sorbian as well. Ooh,
Kashubian.
Kashubian. Yes. And then I don't know what the deal with Wales is, but there's some culture, there's some color strangeness going on there. Oh, and then you've got the Bretons where the Cornish speak Breton as their dialect. Oh, rip
The
Cornwall.
Brit, Wales, Cornwall, and Breton. Welsh, Cornish, Breton is probably a shared language. Three
Well,
dialects.
the
Brythonic.
the Cornish literally just have Breton dialect too. They don't even have their
Oh,
own
do they?
dialect. But yeah, they're all the same language. Um, but you have the eastern of the two because there's the two Breton cultures, and the one in the east just has the French dialect as well, which is also very interesting to me. And then you have Norman as its own dialect. That's so neat. Huh. Well, continuing along then. And yeah, Frisian is its own language. I'll have to ask Valar about that. I'm sure he thinks that's really neat. Anyway, so several ways of interacting. I gotta. Okay, how much is left of this? Whoo! All right, all right.
Yeah, a fair bit.
Common languages of culture is simply the language that is used by the primary culture. It can't be chosen or changed without affecting the primary culture. Okay, so that stays the same. That does not you don't change what a culture. Wait, without affecting the primary culture. So theoretically, a culture can change its language. Maybe seems to be implying that every country has a liturgical language which represents the language that the clergy use in their rituals and scriptures, and by extension what scholars use in their academic works. Okay, so I was wrong. Every language does in fact. Oh no! Some religions allow a country to choose whichever liturgical language they like. So yes, they some religions will have their own ones, but otherwise you will just pick your own one. So yeah, it is what uh, Gimal said.
Or rather, some religions will allow you to choose, whereas some religions
Yeah.
will lock you to a single liturgical
Um,
language.
yeah, as they're saying, Catholic and Islam will yeah, Latin and Arabic respectively, which is I'm sure very interesting from a gameplay standpoint, where there aren't actually any languages that use that any countries that have Latin as their language. Um, but Arabic is the language of probably a fair few countries and cultures. In general, you want to adopt a liturgical language with high language power as it affects your research speed. I'm sure Latin is quite powerful in that regard. Market language. Markets also have a market language to represent the lingua franca used between the merchants, which is based on the dominant language of the burghers in the market capital. The higher the market power, the higher its contribution to the language power. Locations will have a higher attraction towards markets that share their dominant language, and a slightly smaller boost if they only share a language family. Alright?
It's a little weird seeing the Prague trade node have Czech be the trade language, West Slavic there. I understand why it's that way, but
Yeah.
I mean that's covering Vienna and Bavaria both, so feels a bit odd.
It is strange, yes. Spanish, Persian. So then you see Chinese all over the place. Georgian
Chinese.
language. Cham. Interesting. German. German dominates all of Scandinavia's trade right now. That's very interesting, actually. Every country
Oh,
also has a
yeah.
court language which represents the primary vernacular used in informal proceedings in the government. For example, it might be the language spoken in parliament or written in legal documents. Unlike the others, court language can be changed almost at will. The possible languages are drawn from your primary and accepted cultures, your ruler, or your overlord country. The exact court language you have affects the satisfaction of the various estates. Nobles want you to have a more powerful language, meanwhile the peasants just want it to be the common language that's spoken. Burghers are happy if you use the same as the capital's market language, and the clergy, of course, want everything to be used in the liturgical language. Oh boy, you can't make everyone happy. Most countries start with the same court language as their common language, but significant examples of where it is different in 1337 would include Norman French in England, and the church Latin being common in Catholic theocracies. Also,
And Hungary.
Hungary. Yeah, also just Hungary because reasons, I guess. That's interesting. Huh. Culture group. Culture group is a set of cultures that have a sort of shared identity towards each other. Culture groups are usually independent of language and the current diplomacy, but rather represent a more geographic and genealogical connection that is difficult to represent without abstraction. A good example would be the British culture group. The diverse cultures of Great Britain have 3 different languages across several different countries, and yet they are all still united by their shared history and cultural influence that transcends the borders. So British culture group. English Northumbrian. Northumbrian? Northumbrian exists?
Yeah, I
Scots,
just think it's extinct at this start.
or maybe it's very small. Uh, yeah, Scotch, Welsh, Cornish, Norse Gael, Anglo-Irish. So okay, yeah, the normal Irish is not in that group, which is probably a good thing. In gameplay terms, culture groups give small opinion bonuses and make cultural acceptance a lot cheaper. But also various pieces of content are gated behind culture group instead of culture. For example, your primary culture needs you to be in the British culture group to form Great Britain. So you could do it if you're Anglo-British. Or Anglo-Irish rather. Interesting, you could do it as the Norse Gael. That's fun. You'd be Norse Gaelic Britain. One change we made from EU4 is that cultures can belong to multiple different culture groups, or if they are isolated enough, none at all. Very interesting, actually. Norse Gael, okay, so Norse Gael, it uses the Scottish dialect. So the Gaelic language, yeah. And it's part of Gaelic, or it's part of Celtic, Scottish, British, and Scandinavian culture groups. That's very interesting. I like that. Ooh. The most extreme example of multiple culture groups, but the median is closer to 1 or 2. Alright. That's all for now. But our talks on culture don't stop here. Next week, the artist currently known as Yo will make a song and dance about some deeper aspects of culture that are brand new for Project Caesar, such as works of art and culture war. Oh God! Well, that's that's a surprising feature. Sheesh, I didn't expect those terms to be things I'd see in reference to this game. Um, Works of art? And I wonder if you can actually change to be a different cultural language. I don't know. Or change your culture to somehow have different languages. I highly doubt it based on what we've seen now, but I'm still curious about it. And we'll have it. I'll have it confirmed once the game's out, I suppose, or maybe in comments someone will tell me. But for now, I must be heading to work, and I still don't have my work shirt on. Oh shoot! But for now, I unfortunately do need to be rushing off to work. I'm sorry, everyone, but that is how it is. Today is my last of these big old night shifts now, so I will be normalizing my content once again shortly. I'll be able to do more modding and streaming once all these are done. So, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you next time. We'll catch up. Maybe we'll look through the dev responses on this during the next Tinto talk as well for the maps. So, bye for now, though.